Ridhwaan, good afternoon, and thanks so much for your time. So it does seem a little bit confusing. We're seeing the number of cases dropping, but we're seeing the number of deaths increasing. What do we gauge from that? What's the explanation for that?
Good afternoon, Uveka. So as always, cases and test positivity rates are leading indicators, and we know that hospitalizations and deaths do lag. We're starting to see that nationally the situation is stabilizing, with the number of cases on a downward trend now for the past 2 weeks. Unfortunately, though, hospitalizations do lag that by 2 weeks, and deaths do lag that by at least 3 to 4 weeks. So we're still seeing a very high number of deaths being reported.
All right, so in terms of what we're seeing at the moment, are we possibly then, Ridhwaan, looking at the beginning of the end? Have we peaked in some parts? Are we peaking and then likely to see the numbers drop even further when it comes to the number of positive cases?
Certainly. So nationally, we have peaked. We are on a downward trend for the past 2 weeks. Over the last week, we're averaging just over 12,000 new cases per day across the country, and that figure is down about 19% week on week, primarily driven by Gauteng, which has peaked by all indicators, including hospitalizations and deaths in Gauteng, are all on a downward trend, which is promising. All of the neighboring provinces of Gauteng have are also on a downward trend, so they seem to all have peaked as well. Unfortunately, we're not quite out of the woods just yet, because a peak means the highest point, so the infection rate still remains high. And in the coastal provinces, we're still seeing slight increases, albeit at a much slower rate.
So concern about the Western Cape as well, in particular now, if we're looking at that provincial background breakdown, Ridhwaan. And also, we have to watch KZN very closely, I'm assuming. The after effects of the looting, we've already heard of a large number of those who've been arrested in regard to that, also testing positive. So what are we watching for there?
Yeah, so I think we certainly need to watch the three big coastal provinces still. Western Cape and Eastern Cape, certainly the number of new reported cases are slowing down, haven't quite reached the peak just yet. So they both seem to be on a bit of a plateau. In Western Cape, new cases are up 6% week on week. It's been on a stubborn plateau for about a week, or even more than that now. Seems to be close to a peak. In the Eastern Cape as well, the rate of increase is also slowing down. New cases there up 4%, so heading towards the peak there. Unfortunately, in KZN, it's a bit difficult to tell due to the decline in testing in the previous week as a result of the unrest and rioting. We are seeing that the reported cases in KZN are increasing back towards pre-unrest periods, and up over 50% now compared to a week ago. But remember, the previous week saw a large decline in the number of tests. So we do need to watch KZN quite closely in the coming week to see if there has been any impact of those riots and gatherings from the previous week.
And Ridhwaan, when we spoke a couple of weeks ago, it was also just ahead of a family meeting. You felt that, yes, another 2 weeks would make a difference in terms of another 2 weeks of level 4 as we know it, or as we've known it, would make a difference. What do you reckon needs to happen now? What would you like to hear from the President tonight, just looking at the latest information at hand?
So given the epidemiological trends and the data that we are seeing, not only in cases, but if we look at hospitalizations and deaths, we're certainly seeing that the situation has stabilized nationally and in most of the provinces, with hospitalizations decreasing also in Gauteng and many of its neighboring provinces. So I think the data would support some easing of the national restrictions. I wouldn't be surprised if we go down a nudge to level 3 restrictions, and with corresponding easing across the curfew level, as well as some of the other restrictions on gatherings and interprovincial movement. I think we would still need to be a bit cautious, because, as mentioned, the risk still remains, and we still need to wait for the coastal provinces to actually turn and go down. So not quite out of the woods, but I think there's possibly some evidence to support some easing of restrictions at this stage.
All right, Dr. Ridhwaan Suliman, thank you so much for that. Senior Researcher at the CSIR, just looking at the data and ahead of that family meeting, what is likely to happen? What will the President tell us?